Today in Flex in the City, we talk to Janusz Lorenc, CEO and co-founder of Metrosoft, as he explains the importance of values, understanding human beings, and the power that flow can bring to the financial service industry. All that happening right now in Flex and the City.
Hello, everybody. This is Rachel Treese for Flex and the City. And today I'm absolutely delighted to have our first guest from Poland, Polish gentleman. His name is Janusz Lorenc, and he is one of the founders and the CEO of Metrosoft. I had the great pleasure of meeting Janusz in the flesh over the last couple of weeks. Fantastic conversation. So I'm looking forward to a further conversation and sharing it with you all today. Lovely to have you on the show.
Hi, Rachel. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm very happy to have you. So you're an amazing gentleman who's done some amazing things in life. And I know that you divide your time between the USA and Poland. So I'd love you to tell us a little bit about your life story and how you came to be the CEO of Metrosoft. It'd be really interesting.
Well, this is like most things in life. This was pure coincidence. I was born and raised in communist Poland, when in order to do meaningful things and do things that you were thinking were right, you needed to figure out the way around many things. And then just by coincidence, I decided to visit US for a few weeks, met my friend who was also a skier because we were skiers. And he says, oh, let's start the company in US. So we started the company in US. It was kind of a difficult journey because even though we believed in ourselves, at that time, this was quite some time ago, the perception of people from Poland in US. So took us some time to really get through that we can get things done. Mm-hmm. So we started the company. We won the first client that was a asset manager on Wall Street, small one, that believed in us. That asset manager actually registered, it was a long time ago, 20 years ago, registered SICA funds in Luxembourg and told us, could you do something for us? Because we have this problem. We have systems in US, systems in Luxembourg. We want to produce the reports across the systems. So we figure out the way to do it. And this is how it started. So this is pretty much what I did in terms of becoming CEO. Then we started working in that client in Luxembourg, and it turns out that Europe is completely different in US, completely different. At that time, the landscape was different. The regulations in each country were different. The regulators were different. Everything was different. So we looked at it as an opportunity, and we started delivering solutions that we couldn't. This was early. And this is how we started doing it. On the other parallel path, I was raised by my grandma for the good part of my youth. And she told me that, of course, I'm important. Of course, I'm good. Of course, I'm smart, but others are more important. So it made me think that we should, along with my values of my friends then in a very small company, do things that are important, do things that are meaningful, do things that will bring value. So in the long run, now looking back, it paid off. It paid off because we built a team that thinks along these lines. Mm-hmm. This team doesn't go for a short-term reward, and this team believes in what they do. So I think this is very important to understand that what you do matters. What you're doing matters. How you serve others, clients, communities, how you serve your employees matters. And doing that creates value for really, really long run.
So real sustainability. And so what is most meaningful for you, Janusz?
Well, most meaningful, my children and grandchildren, obviously, and my wife. But I think this is a very difficult question because you can look at it from many different angles. Mm. You can look at it from your personal point of view. You can look from what value do you bring to the people that surround you. You can look at it from an angle. So how what you do impacts others in the long run. For example, financial services, the purpose we exist is to make the industry simpler, to provide transparency, to lower the cost, because at the end of the day, it lowers the actual cost to the investor. At the end of the day, it lowers the cost to operate. In the long run, it creates value. So this is about the industry. From personal point of view, I think the most important thing for me is I don't know how to say that, to share wisdom, to share the knowledge. I'm an old man and I lived through different times. I lived in communism. I lived in US. I lived in US for 34 years. So, and I spent quite a lot of time, of course, short periods of time in Luxembourg, in Ireland, in UK. So I think one of the problems that I see is that people, especially today, move a little bit too fast, taking a longer term view, having broader perspective, being able to see things that you don't see at the first sight is very important, because if you do this, then you can move a little more effectively, you can spend less effort, you can create better value. So what motivates me, what's important for me, is to be able to convey to the people I work with. By meaning people I work with is not only people here at Metrosoft, it's also people who are our clients. So I work with very, very young people. The average, I would say, is 30s. People that I work with here are between 22 and 40, maybe 45. That's it. So there is a huge generational gap between me and them. So being able to listen to them, to understand them, and not necessarily to tell them I'm smarter, I know more, but being able to tell them, look at it from different angle. Don't rush, ask others. You may be wrong. I think it's very important, because I see, and you know what's unusual, I told you that when we met, I have young people that joined me when they were still students, and 10 years, 12 years later, they still work for us. And I think they enjoy working for me, for me. Not so. So being able to convey that, being able to help them see things broader, a little faster, it gives me really immense satisfaction. And some of them grew so much over the time that we worked together. So this is one thing. And obviously on the other level, meaning family level now, I have two children that are grown up now, and I never really put much effort into raising them. Somehow it happened. I think if you treat everyone, regardless of age, as an equal, I have 6-year-old granddaughter who debates with me on different subjects, and of course sometimes she's right, sometimes I'm right, and so of course she thinks that she's always right. So being able to communicate with anyone, even at in such a young age, is I think is very, very important. So this is what's important for me, really.
Yeah, which leads me to the question. You explained that you were brought up in communist Poland, and I know that you spent a lot of time in the US. So I'm curious if you've observed either sort of world leadership or even leaders in the financial services industry during that period that have really inspired you, or who you go, that's a great leader.
This is actually very, very good, very interesting question. I met a lot of very interesting people, and on various levels in different organizations, smaller organizations like the first client we had in US, it's the Alger Fund. They still exist today. I met Dave Alger and Fred Alger in my early days, and of course not on a daily basis, but I met them. And did they inspire me? They inspired me in the sense that you can build an organization if you A, understand the environment you're operating in, B, if you try to listen to understand more, and if you're persistent, then you can be successful. So being persistent is important. So these are old days. But recently, I know one of your guests on your podcast, Noel Fessi. I know him for quite some time, and I interact with him quite often. I met him when he was CEO of Schroders, then I continued. And the way he thinks, the way he leads, the things he reads, So it's very inspiring to see someone being such a great leader. Of course, I met many other people, but Noel sort of stands out as a person that I met recently.
Yes. So talking about reading, and I know that Noel reads a lot and you read a lot, has there been any books that have really stood out, any lessons, leadership lessons from some of the books that you've read? I know that you're a huge fan of Warren Buffett. So
You too. You as well.
Me too, yeah.
So my upbringing history is kind of interesting. I'm an engineer. I'm an engineer by training. My father was an engineer. My mom was a chemist. So, science. Logic rules the world. Mathematical equations, physics explains everything. So this way I was brought up. So I read a lot of things around it. But then somehow in my young days, I met friends and young people in Poland. When I was in Poland, they were studying history of art. So I was hanging out with them for quite some time, even going to the lectures with them. So they sort of opened my eyes and said, wow, there are other authors. So of course I read books at school because everyone reads books at school. So in early days, fiction, Kurt Vonnegut, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, early books. So I started understanding the world is not really exactly the way I think. So then one of the very young people that works here, he's still with us 12 years later, asked me one day, did you read Creativity Inc., the book? So yeah, he gave me the book. I read the book. And we started this very strange custom that continues until today. We bring books to the office and we tell the people that books are great. And we now have a custom that I buy or someone buys 10, 20 copies of interesting book. They sit in the office. We created this ex libris. Not many people know what ex libris is these days. That says Metrosoft. Read it, keep it, gift it, or return it. That's our motto. So anyone can take a book, can read it, can give it to someone, can bring it back, can keep it home. So, and we do it, and people read a lot. So then I started, people were telling me, psychology, human behavior. I was an engineer. And then I read Daniel Kahneman. I've heard of him, but when he finally published Thinking Fast and Slow, I read it, I said, wow, now I know how it works. Obviously, this is simplification, but the fact and thinking fast, thinking slow. Thinking fast is controlled by basal ganglia, and basal ganglia controls habit learning, emotions, cognition, some very basic things. And most people think using thinking fast method. Thinking fast maybe is a wrong expression because you can think also using sort of thinking slow. It's method 1, method 2. So most people use method 1. So I started looking at it and wow, okay. And I started reading more and more and more. So I read Charles Duhigg Habit. I read tons of books basically on human behavior, where things come from, how people think. Of course, we read Frederick Laloux a long time ago, and we turned the company into being Thiel, which was originally a little bit of nightmare because everybody thought, oh, wow, now anyone can do anything. So putting it back on track was a little bit of effort. So I started understanding how it works. And then, of course, recently when I learned that you publish a book, I bought it in US and I read it the first thing. So it is interesting, of course, but at the end of the day, there are other very interesting things. So this type of books, they really helped me understand exactly why people. I think I understand how people behave, why they behave in certain way, and how to understanding it, how to communicate better, how to listen better, how to. I don't want to use the word coach because I am not the coach, but I think that everyone that cares about other people, cares about their growth, has some kind of a gene of a coach that properly trained that can do it. So I think, I don't say I succeeded, but I think it works. But then, of course, for various reasons that because we discussed it, I started looking at other things. I started looking at the future of humanity. So I started reading Nick Bostrom, Superintelligence, very good book. I started reading some papers that were published either earlier by him or by others. Then I listened to podcasts of Demis Hassabis that started DeepMind. Demis Hassabis said that one of the books that formed him was Gödel Escher Bach, and go back, and I bought that book. It was written 20 years ago, and I started reading it. It's very difficult. I have it for a year, and I cannot get through it. So it's also kind of an intellectual challenge. A very good book, seriously, very good book. So at the end of the day, I am reading many different books and trying to answer this question: how humans think, how behavior of humans and now progress in AI will influence humanity, what will happen with humanity. And of course, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of global warming, and we can do small things, and I'm trying to do small things. But I also worry about AI. That's a serious problem.
That's a really interesting sort of lead on to, how do you think AI is going to affect human beings, and how is it going to affect leadership of human beings?
Well, depending on which level you look at it, because Nick Bostrom, he's a director of Institute of Future of Humanity at Oxford, and he thinks that of course he's a philosopher, but he has long run predictions. There are three ways AI can behave: can escape, can be controlled to a certain extent, or we can control it. Mm. And the question is, what is really AI also? So it's interesting, but let's assume that AI will not escape and we can still control it, because this is a positive scenario. The impact, huge today, huge impact. You're touching another very interesting subject that's kind of far from the industry working in, but it's Shoshana Zuboff. She's a professor emerita, I think, in Harvard. She wrote the book Surveillance Capitalism, and actually today there is a short article in Financial Times on her position on AI. AI can be used for good things. For example, AI today can detect, when it looks at X-rays, MRIs, statistically when you actually test it, is far better than doctors. That's one of positive uses of AI, among many others. But also AI helps very large companies to understand and control behavior of larger groups. So this is danger. Where it will go, I think it will be controlled. Shoshana, I didn't finish reading the article. Shoshana mentions some new AI regulation coming up in EU, controlling what AI can do, cannot do. So this is positive thing. Now, financial industry, AI can do a lot. AI can not replace people. I don't think it will replace people. And I'm talking mainly about financial services, not investment side, but asset servicing side. Can really, remove a lot of mundane, repetitive tasks. B, can understand the situations and classify cases better than humans, even today, if properly applied, and can do some predictions that are difficult for humans to do. Specifically, I now refer to KYC processes, know your customer, risk associated with it, risk onboarding the client. So I think it will have huge impact, huge.
Absolutely. So going back to human beings, I'm curious, because you've spent so much time in both the US and Europe. Do you see any difference in the way leaders lead culturally in those two geographical areas?
Yes and no. Mm-hmm. No, really, because I think we're global today. Mm-hmm. We can talk at any point of time, in any time zone, via video. We can communicate very effectively. So in one sense, no. In another sense, yes. And it's less Europe and US. It's more actual specific countries in the world. Mm-hmm. We have clients in Australia, Europe, US. So because of cultural differences, leaders lead differently. And there are two sides of it. One, the leader comes from different culture. B, you have a team that grew in certain culture. So to lead effectively the team, you need to understand who people are. This is normal. This is everywhere. I think it was Daniel Hofstadter that did this research for IBM in the 80s, when he tried to help IBM to lead different teams in different parts of the globe, effectively understanding human behavior based on ethnicity is maybe the wrong word, based on environment in which they grew up, because the way you were raised affects you for the rest of your life. So I think there are differences. I really do, and these differences are mainly in ability to be open, to listen, to understand people in different cultures. Because if you don't do it, you're not a leader; you're just the boss. So this is one. But on leader's side, I don't think there are many differences. I really don't.
Tell me for yourself, I know that you've won some really large organizations. You have some large American clients, you have some large European clients in the financial services industry. What was it about you and your team, or some of the qualities about you and your team, that allowed you to succeed in that space?
Well, we won some, but we also didn't win some. So I think it's a matter of principle. I think it's really a matter of principle. And it's not only who we won, who we didn't win, it's also how then the relationship grows, how the relationship is established, how trust is established once you won the client. I think that the key here is, in any organization, small or large, you have informal communication paths, you have informal dynamics. And I use that word, now I realize this word may mean something that you use. No, we don't use it. I'm just saying that you need to understand the needs of your client, and you need to show the client that you are different. We need to show that we're different every day, because we're so small that we need to be different. Because if we're the same as any other organization, especially large, there is no reason to look at us. And by being different is meaning you understand the problem better. You have a solution that does not necessarily automate today's task, or doesn't necessarily do what potential client wants you to do. If you come back with a concept that's different, but clearly you can show you're changing the world. The world is a very big word, but at the end of the day, if asset service is more effective, the asset manager pays less, it translates into savings to everyone, including an investor. So I think we came up with many very interesting solutions very early, and then you build the trust, and then you become a partner. You sit at the same side of the table. It's not a vendor-client relationship. It's a partnership relationship, when you can really now look at things, and any problem that comes up, you solve as a partner. I think that's a key. The difference, I think, young people, creative, not being afraid to state what they believe in, of course, very nice manner, but still be fairly firm. And sometimes people don't listen to you, don't win them.
Absolutely. So now I'd love to tap into your wisdom. So I have a 16-year-old. I have a 16-year-old daughter who, she likes her economics, she likes her maths. So we'll see which direction she goes in. But if she was a young person starting in the financial services industry, what's the wisdom that you'd give a young person starting in the industry?
Well, I can probably tell you what I will tell young person starting a career, not necessarily in financial industry specifically, in financial industry maybe being on my side. I think, contrary, I've listened to some of the podcasts, not all of them, and contrary to some statements that these jobs are boring, they're not. You've heard of concept of flow. Chakashvili, I think was his name, the psychologist.
Yeah.
Anything you do that you want to do, because you need to want to do it, and anything you do needs to be a little above your capability. Because if you try to do things that are within your capability, it gets boring. That's the answer about boring. So you need to aim at things that are a little higher, a little above what you can do. I shouldn't say that, but if you originally aim too high, you may be a little bit burned, and you may not like it. So always really try to do more than you think you can do. Then it becomes interesting, because you need to solve problems. Typically, when people get engaged into solving problems that are challenges, but they can solve, time starts flowing, things start flowing. This is one thing, very general. And another thing is challenge authority. Don't be afraid. Your challenge needs to be merit-based, but challenge authority. Never be afraid, because then you can grow. You may be wrong. So if you challenge authority and it's merit-based, you may hear back, you're really wrong. But then at least you learn something. But if you're right, then you create value, then you propel company and your team forward. So this is it. And then really being yourself is, you know that I never worked for anyone really. I always worked for myself. Being yourself, doing what you believe is right. Don't do it for the money. Of course, you need to earn the money to live, but doing it for money is a wrong approach, because if you do right things, if you believe in it, if people around you, your life is good.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Janusz. So my last question is, I know you're a fantastic father, husband, grandfather, but is there other hobbies that you have outside of your work that you love doing? I'm sure you've got plenty.
I'll be very brief. First, I'll list them. No, I'm joking. I'm a skier. I ski. You don't even know how long. I ski for a really long time. Started when I was 5, and there was no chairlifts. I would go with my parents, and we would actually walk up and then ski down. So I'm a skier. I was ski teacher for many, many years. I was president of the largest student ski club in Poland. So skiing, we went skiing all over the place. And I still ski. I ski a lot. When my daughter was on a race team, she was young. She couldn't drive, so I had to go to every practice. I needed to training. I need to go to every race. So I was skiing a lot. I still ski a lot. I mean, for my age, I think I ski between 20 to 30 days a year still. So skiing is good. Then I was riding horses for a long time, because my grandfather was in the cavalry. So when I was 15, I got my riding boots and I got my riding pants, and he sent me like that to school. And the school laughed at me for the next 3 months. I remember that. So horseback riding, I still do it, not as much these days. And then late, I started dancing Argentine tango, which was for the last 10 years my passion. And I used to dance pretty much 5 nights a week for quite a few years. And there are others, but these are things. But now I want to tell you something that you didn't expect, I think. All this, you told me that you know what Shuhari is. Shuhari, the philosophy. The Shuhari is you're a student, you are a teacher because you understand what's going on, and Ri is your master. You can do anything. So everyone speaks today about agility, this Scrum methodology of development. And as I look back at everything I did, everything is the same. In the beginning, you learn. Then a little later, you think you know, and you feel really good. And when you reach certain level, everything flows. Everything flows. So try to never stop and try to achieve the mastership level. It's very difficult, but try to do it. I think that I ski very well. I think I dance very well. That's what I think. And then you flow. You flow, no effort. Same thing applies to work. There is a software development methodology framework that's called Scrum. It's an agile. Same thing. Shuhari applies. And if you read any books, or if you read, that's the last interesting story. The Scrum is part of agility. Agility is a concept everyone uses today. And Scrum concept in software development was published. There was a paper published by Ken Schwaber, and I think Ken Schwaber only, but he worked on with Jeff Sutherland in '96 at the Uppsala conference in US. That paper was inspired by the article written by, I think, Professor Nonaka and Takeuchi in Harvard Business Review in '86. Mm-hmm. And it was about effective methods of running the company. It was about Honda, the company manufactured motorcycles and cars at that time. And they actually, believe it or not, mentioned Shuhari, they mentioned skiing, they mentioned Argentine tango. Seriously, because everything in life is about you learn, and if you stop and don't try to become a master, then it becomes difficult. If you always try to master what you do, life is easier, better, more fun.
Absolutely. So I am just going to touch on the skiing, because something came to my mind as you talked about skiing. When I first started skiing, I didn't have a helmet. I had just a woolly hat, etc. So skiing over the last 30 years has, I think, become faster and maybe, maybe more dangerous. I don't know. So I just wonder what the financial services industry can learn from skiing and the pace of skiing.
Wow, you got me here.
Oh,
wow. Okay, let me think. First of all, I don't think that skiing became more dangerous, because if you look at, I think, number of fatalities, it's probably similar. At least this is what I think, because equipment is better, because the trails are better prepared, because actually when I started skiing, helmets didn't exist. Even in World Cup, they had no helmets. So I think it changed. The bindings improved a lot. So if you look at anything, I mean, it actually would work with financial industry. The tools the financial industry has, the way the operations are conducted these days, I think it changes also over time. If financial industry can learn anything from skiing, I think they can learn one thing not only from skiing, for anything. It needs to be effortless. It needs to be safe. It needs to be fairly fast. You cannot actually ski well if you ski slow. You cannot ski well if you ski slow, because skiing is about energy. Skiing is about your interaction with the terrain. Skiing is about using energy that you give into the terrain, recuperating it, and then going into another turn. So same thing in anything you do, also in financial industry. If you have processes that are well thought through, well designed, you can put people onto more interesting tasks. You give them more fun, the time flows better. I think there is some parallel. The question was actually kind of interesting.
Fantastic. So I think everybody, you've heard it here, how to bring flow into the financial services industry. Janusz Lorenc, thank you so much for being with me. I've really enjoyed that conversation, and I look forward to more conversations in the future. It's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Rachel, thank you. Thank you for listening to me.
You just listened to Flex in the City. Catch us on our next episode.